Good morning. I'm back to present another topic in Chapter 12 called kin selection. Very interesting topic. Applies to animals, certain groups of animals that live in a social hierarchy, if you will, or a caste system. Kin selection was first mentioned by Darwin in his Origin of Species. He referred to it when talking about some social groups of insects like ants. Kin selection is a type of natural selection in which the environment tends to favor genes or traits that are altruistic type behaviors in which an individual may give of his or her life to benefit its relatives' survival and future reproduction. And this altruistic behavior is toward relatives and not unrelated members of the same species. Meerkats are shown in the upper right illustration. Ground squirrels, termites, and honeybees are shown in the lower right illustration. So kin selection tends to propose that there are genes or alleles for this altruistic behavior, and natural selection may favor these traits and pass them on to the next generation. And that would help to increase the fitness of the individual that shows this altruism. We refer to animals that live in social groups and these behaviors that they have, these altruistic behaviors, we refer to this as eusociality, which you see in italics in the lower right box. Let me just mention this lower right box. Alarm calls are considered to be important in mammals that live in social groups, and often it is an older female that does an alarm call when a predator is in its environment. The older female has more likely than not reproduced several times, and it will self-sacrifice itself such that younger females and members of its social group will survive and potentially have more offspring that are genetically related to this older female. So alarm calls are considered to be a favorable trait that is selected for in this social group of prairie dogs or ground squirrels. So Darwin introduced the concept of kin selection. He didn't really call it that, but he talked of it in such a way that it's presumed that that's exactly what he was meaning. The concept of kin selection was really expanded upon and tested by W.D. Hamilton. He used several variables to indicate when would an altruistic behavior occur and be potentially then passed on by natural selection. And his model was that if genetic relatedness and inclusive fitness were greater than the cost to the individual's fitness, that this altruistic behavior would occur, and that this behavior was actually genetic and could be selected upon by natural selection. So let's talk about a couple of these factors in his model. Inclusive fitness is the number of offspring or genes, alleles, that an individual has, and also that its relatives has. So it includes the number of genes or alleles that the relatives of an individual have and pass on to the next generation. So it includes the concept of what is the best way to have offspring, what is the best way to have the largest number of offspring. inclusive fitness and this concept of it is directly related to genetic relatedness, called the coefficient of relationship, which is how many genes or alleles do two individuals share. I and you share 50% of your alleles with each of your parents. I and you share 25% of our alleles, genes, with each of our 4 grandparents. I and you, if your great-grandparents are still alive, we share 12.5% of our alleles with each of them. I don't know if you would have great-great-grandparents alive, but we share just over 6% of our alleles with each of them, if you were to go back 4 generations. With each of your aunts or uncles, you share about 25% of your alleles, and with each of your first cousins, your aunt or uncle's children, you share about 12.5% of your alleles. So it's considered that an individual would be most altruistic with relatives that it shares a higher percentage of alleles with. Okay, so some examples. We refer to these behaviors of living in social groups. We refer to it as eusociality. It was listed on the first slide after the chapter 12 topic slide. So ants, bees, and wasps are members of the insect order Hymenoptera, and they show kin selection. Termites of the order Blattodea show kin selection also. They tend to live in caste systems where you have a division of labor. You have different individuals that reproduce. You have most of the individuals who do not and do lots of work. Most of the individuals in a honeybee caste, which I'm referring to now with the last 3 bullets, there is one queen, and she is shown in the top right. Most of the other members of a honeybee society are sterile workers or soldiers that defend the colony. They are illustrated with a green and yellow dot on their thorax in the lower right photograph. Male honeybees are called drones. They primarily get an opportunity to mate with the queen, or if they don't get an opportunity to do that, they're fairly useless, and they don't really do a lot of work or anything in the colony at all. And they're illustrated with the 2 red dots. There tends to be drones in a honeybee society only during the growing season, and they tend to get kicked out and they die over winter. They tend to not be any male bees in a honeybee society during the winter. It's an interesting means of social behavior and living in a group. This particular slide shows you subterranean termites. We certainly don't want to see those around our house if we can help it. They tend to occur and live off of wood that is at or underneath the ground level. The queen is shown in the lower right, and just look at the size of her abdomen. Some of the soldier termites are shown the lower left with the large jaws that they use to protect the colony. The sterile worker females are shown in the top left, their little whitish bodies. And the top right shows with wings that during certain times of the year, termites will swarm. And what that means is some termites in the colony will develop wings, and the wings are used to fly, needless to say, and a female will develop these wings and will fly to a new area and become reproductive and will set up a new colony. So the top right is called a swarmer. It's when a sterile female can develop wings, fly off to a new area. Her ovaries will develop and she will begin laying eggs and develop a new colony of termites. You might guess then that members of an ant, a honeybee, or even a termite colony are all typically genetically related to the queen that lays the eggs in this colony. So there's a high degree of genetic relatedness in these insect colonies. So a sterile worker or a sterile soldier that's a female will give their life because it protects other members that they are very closely related to. So you see the same thing in mammals, in particular rodents, where they live in groups, such as the naked mole rat that lives in Africa. There is one reproductive female, a few reproductive males, and other members of the colony that live underground. They have an extensive system of tunnels in which they live, and they feed off of plant roots primarily, and other vegetation. Other members of this mole rat colony are females who do a variety of tasks to help support the single reproductive queen. You may have seen a mole rat in a zoo. Every now and then you'll see a mole rat in a zoo, and they're very interesting animals. You can see how, for the most part, how naked, so to speak, they are. They're not being covered with very much hair at all. So, and I kind of return to where I started with the use of alarm calls, that oftentimes females will provide an alarm call to alert other members of their group, genetically related group, that a danger or predator is in the area. They draw attention to themselves. Often it's an older female that draws attention to her, exposes herself to a higher chance of being killed, with the concept being that younger females and individuals in the group will survive and continue reproducing and passing on her genes that she shares with them. So alarm calls are very useful and are considered to be a favorable trait in groups of mammals. Usually they're rodents that live in these social groups. So this also exists, I should mention it, it also exists in certain groups of primates. I saw some examples of macaques, which are types like a monkey, that have alarm calls as well. And you may have seen it with howler monkeys and the little spider monkeys. Some of the primates use alarm calls as well to alert other genetically related individuals of danger. So alarm calls are not only used in rodents but also in primates. So it's just a fascinating topic. If you ever take animal behavior with Dr. Clooney, you'll probably expand and learn a whole lot more about this type of natural selection. I'm just trying to introduce it to you and give you some concepts of it. It certainly has a lot of support. It has a lot of criticism too. So it's not a proven, so to speak, law. It's a theory. It has support. It has criticism, and it's used to try to explain the way that certain groups of animals live in a social environment, in a social group. So that kind of concludes this topic. We're going to start talking about mating systems and sexual selection in the next two videos. So y'all take care, and I'll talk to you soon. Goodbye.